Hellfire slash Milan slash, whatever generation, Western NATO style anti-tank missile. ATGW, anti-tank guided weapon, is the official term. But no worries there. So yeah, we've got a couple Apaches ready. We've got one company of M1A1 Abrams. That's 3 platoons. Again, every one thing that sometimes people need to get that I like to remind people about when we start one of these demo games is that Panzer Leader is a platoon based game, not a platoon level game, a platoon based game. Every single piece on the table is a platoon. 5 vehicles, maybe aircraft, or 50 men, or some combination therein. A roughly platoon sized force. Put another way, every single piece on this table is a bolt action army. 2 or 3 pieces put together would be a Team Yankee army. Obviously, Panzer Leader is a command tactical, a level 2 level game, whatever you want to call it. This is the scale at which tactical combat actually really takes place. Very difficult to capture on a miniature table of any scale, especially in the modern era, because the ranges are just absurd. Everything shoots out to 3 kilometers. Everything hits. Everything kills. Modern combat is extremely lethal. And so you have to get that scale right, because that scale is what's going to determine your relationship, so to speak, between your movement, your survivability, and your firepower. If there's a bunch of Iraqi tanks crossing a field towards you, how fast can you kill them? Because of you have to get that distance right. That distance has to be right. That lethality has to be right. That range has to be right. In game terms, how many fire phases is he going to have to survive before he reaches you? And that's a thing that these kind of games really get right, because they don't use obviously miniatures. You can make the tables big or as small as you want, and you're kind of unshackled from the 28 millimeter, 15 millimeter, even 6 millimeter, kind of a thing. Even at 6 millimeter, this table would be 20 feet across. That's just the way modern warfare really looks. The only way around it is to do what some 6 millimeter games do, like GHQ Micro Armor, which is a miniature version of this game, basically. It is, you put one, M1 Abrams in 6 millimeter on the table in GHQ Micro Armor. That's a platoon of 5. And it doesn't try to be true line of sight. The vehicles do not have to be in same scale as the terrain, and so on. You put that miniature on the table, that's a visual representation of the position of a platoon of 5. Once you kind of make that hurdle and you make that disconnect between the scale of your units and the scale of the table, the sky's the limit. And now you can play modern warfare really at the scales that it deserves. So GHQ has been doing that since the 1960s. None of this stuff is original at all. I didn't make up any of this stuff. So very, very quickly, here is a quick look at our very quick look at some of our armies for today. Let me take a quick look at the chat here. Yes, hello once again, Tough Ears. Hello, Novus Templar. Thanks very much. Interesting fact, you were in the British. Oh, really? Right across 91. Yeah, a lot of people were. Tough Ears. A lot of people were on 24-hour standby during the Gulf. Actually, I turned out to be one of them. This is how I got, on an extremely peripheral sense, involved. I very, very carefully stress that, because there are people in the community. There's at least one person right now at the 40K boot camp who was there, boots in the sand, for real. There's other people that I met at Historicon. There's other friends I have on the site: U.S. Army, British Army, Royal Engineers. They're all over the place. I think Warhammer Grimace was over there in the later part of the Gulf conflict. We're talking about like the post 2003 Iraqi freedom stuff. There are serious veterans out there. So whenever I talk about Ariskini was in the Marine Corps, Ariskini was in during Gulf One. Yeah, I got to be real careful, because I don't want to. The worst thing you can do as a veteran is say that you did something that you didn't. So yeah, on standby. I was a supply clerk. I wasn't anybody important by any stretch of the imagination. But once those forces started to come together over there, Places like Riyadh, Ras Tanur oil fields, Bahrain, Qatar. We started, building these small city-sized bases over there during Desert Shield, which led up to Desert Storm. Suddenly, they needed a lot of support personnel. They needed a lot of cooks, a lot of supply, because that logistical tail of that army grew out of all proportion to what I think they needed. So yeah, a lot of people got called, a lot of people were on standby, and that's probably the best way I can say that. Welcome Back Games has joined us. Hello. And thank you very much, Sitrep Podcast. I believe that's Gianna for helping us get across different platforms. One of these days, I'm going to have to really learn how to do that for myself, so that we can get across not only Twitch but also live streaming on YouTube and all of our other platforms here on Sitrep. Yeah, it was a scary time, tough years. It really, really was. This I do remember firsthand because I mean we look back at Gulf War One now, and what was it, 159 American fatalities, less than 1,000 casualties. Iraqi casualties are anywhere between 10, or I should say, Iraqi fatalities are anywhere between 10,000 and 100,000, depending on who you read. Smart money is on 30,000. It was a huge walkover. It was history's first information age army against an industrial age army. It wasn't even close. I mean, it was a joke. We didn't know that beforehand. I was in supply, and I'm not sure how much of this I should be probably saying on stream, but I saw some requisitions for some supplies, things they thought they were going to need. That thank God they didn't. One relatively safe example, we literally ordered like 40,000 body bags. We thought that was going to be, like the man said, the mother of all battles. We were ready for a real fight. Again, thank God it didn't turn out that way. But those last couple of weeks of Desert Shield going into Desert Storm were a little tense because again, people at the time did not know how. Not to get on too down of a note here, but people didn't know how one-sided that war was really going to be. This is basically where the internet was invented, or if at least not invented, at least used in a real-life application. Norman Schwarzkopf called them his Jedi Knights. These are the guys who basically ran his army's internet. His kill boxes, his BDAs, his threat assessment software, got all that stuff straightened out. Not only having this much firepower on hand, but also organizing it in real time across a huge, huge battle space. Again, I'm certainly not a combat vet. I was much more of a support guy when I was in, so I have a little bit more of a perspective on that. The support, the coordination, the logistics, it's insane, and it was run pretty much by the world's first real live internet. I know the internet had been developed before then on some university campuses, and that's not the real world. Combat is the real world, and this is where you see, like I said, where Schwarzkopf called them his Jedi Knights. These are his computer guys. Absolutely insane technology for the time. Nowadays we would laugh at it, but in 1991 this was like borderline magical stuff. And this had a real effect. This would have a real effect on table play. If you play on any kind of operational scale, the entire strategy that Schwarzkopf used, the great left hook that we see 7th Corps, 18th Airborne Corps, the French, kind of do that big hook out to the west, north, around the bulk of the Iraqi defenses, and actually into the Iraqi operational rear, into Kuwait. That was the army side of it. I was, the Marines were the people I was with or whatever. I was a member of the Marine Corps at the time. I should be more precise with that. Were much more involved in the frontal attack, which was we didn't know it at the time, but was just pretty much a frontal fixing kind of a defense. Always be wary when a veteran talks to you about a war that he says he was in, because he'll say a lot of stuff like, "Oh, I was there." That doesn't make him a that doesn't make him an authority. When you're an E4 corporal in a war, you don't know nothing, man. I knew the exact same amount as anyone else did watching CNN. They don't tell you shit by design because it's a huge security risk. Um, but I kind of got off on a tangent there. Um, yeah, that whole left hook operational strategy wouldn't have worked if it wasn't for another one of the big again, not inventions, but first time really used in a real life setting, GPS. There's no way. The reason the Iraqis had no defenses that far west on the big Gulf War battlefield was that our army can't move through that terrain. There are no roads, there are no towns, there are no landmarks, there are no nothing. You can't send 20,000 vehicles and 100,000 people across that and expect them to emerge on the other side in any kind of cohesion or, you know, operational viable force at all. The Iraqis knew it, or they thought they knew it. The Americans knew it, but they had a little ace up their sleeve called GPS. And again, connected with the internet and real time data management on a big level in 1991. And what you wind up with is, yeah, this huge force swinging clear around the bulk of the Iraqi army and slamming into the rear area where the Republican Guard was trying to set up some sort of a reserve. Ironically, this is actually the kind of battle we're going to do today. But yeah, it was tense because at the time, dude, we had no idea it was going to be this big of an advantage. We didn't know if half this stuff was going to work. The M1 Abrams was absolutely untried in combat. Nobody knew it was going to be effective or not. People had no idea about the AH-64 Apache, if that was going to work. It did well in the tests. It did well in Germany during all the reforger exercises. How it was going to cope with desert sand. We didn't know if these things were going to be falling out of the sky. We had no idea how the M1 Abrams was going to work. We had no idea how the 810 Warthog was going to work. The 810 Warthog has this mythological kind of a mystique about it that I actually kind of hate because people talk, especially in Team Yankee, because Team Yankee takes place in the 1980s, and every American player has to have at least one 810 in their table. The 810 was phased out at this point. They had it for a couple years. It came out in the 70s. By the mid 80s, the Air Force was sick of it. They basically threw this thing out. It was Air Force Reserve and Air Force National Guard. The Air Force didn't want it. So the idea that the 810 was going to be this huge war-winning kind of a weapon, nobody had a clue before 16 January 1991. Most of what we think we know about how Team Yankee would have really happened were all these games, and I use games loosely, all these systems and books and stuff like that that talk about how all this stuff really would have went down. That's all looked at retroactively through the lens of the Gulf War. Before the Gulf War happened, nobody knew it was going to be like that at all. Trust me, I was there. And people were more than a little nervous. Or if some people did know, they had stars on their shoulder and they weren't calling me. Me and the people that I knew, we were ready for a. There was never any doubt that we were going to win, but we had no idea it was going to be that. I don't want to say cheap, but that relatively bloodless, and I use relatively with big, big air quotes. Oh, cool. We have oh, because movie is here with us. Because movie, how you doing? You're here on your old account. Because movie. Not a big deal. I appreciate the watch nonetheless. But there's because movie, and then there's science teacher. How old were the Russian tanks that the Iraqis used compared to the Russians themselves at the time? That's a great question, Subadai. Okay, deep breath. This is the rant that I always go off on regarding Team Yankee, which, in their defense, and I always stand up for Battlefront here. I know people get the idea that I don't like Battlefront. I do like Battlefront. Battlefront has made huge strides in fixing some of the things with Team Yankee. One of them is the T-72. All right, so how old were the Iraqi tanks compared to the ones that the Soviets were using? The question is almost the Soviets weren't really using the T-72, at least not as their mainline battle tank. That goes from the T-64 to the T-80. There are exceptions, so everyone just kind of relax. There were some German units. I'm sorry, there were some Soviet units in Germany and in Central Europe that used the T-72, but they weren't the main ones. The main group of Soviet forces in Germany, the big, terrifying late 1980s, the kind of stuff you really should be fighting in Team Yankee. These are T-80s, or T-64s, which Battlefront has come out with the Red Thunder release. So awesome for Battlefront on that. Yeah, you want to go up against T-64s. T-64 is actually a better tank than the T-72, even though it's older. So as far as how old were the tanks, that's I don't want to say it's irrelevant. It's just how good the tanks are. So there's the T-64 that the Soviets came out with in about 1964, ironically. So that's going to be their main battle tank through the rest of the 60s and into most of the 70s. They don't send that to anyone. They don't export that. In fact, they're still being used in the Ukraine to this day. They're not a bad tank, especially once you put on some more what's the word? Some more advanced reactive armor panels. The Ukrainians put a better gun in it, and so on. But it's still being used to this day. It's not a bad tank. But by the mid 1980s, they knew that they needed something new. Meanwhile, they had built the T-72. The T-72 was supposed to be the export tank, and these things are terrible. T7. I've been inside T72s in real life. I can barely squeeze my fat ass in there. You have to be like 5'6", and even once you squeeze in there, you can't move around. It's a terror. I couldn't even imagine how horrifying it would be to go into combat in a T72. Just psychologically. I mean, I don't know if I'm claustrophobic or whatever, but the idea that you are literally cocooned in your coffin and you couldn't get out of that tank quickly if you wanted to. It's a horrifying prospect. The T-72 is an absolute death trap. But they were cheap, and the Soviets made them to give away to all their allies. So the East Germans have T-72s, the Poles have T-72s, Iraqis, Syrians. T-72 is everywhere. If you see a Russian tank in a movie, in a Hollywood movie nowadays, it's probably a T-72 because you can buy them on eBay practically for like $40,000. They are absolutely everywhere. They're garbage, but they're everywhere. The export T-72s were actually even a little worse than the ones that the Soviets were forced to keep for themselves. These are the T-72Ms, which the Battlefront includes in their Oil Wars release. Also, I think, yeah, their Oil Wars release. So if you're using T-72s in anywhere except Germany, you want to make sure that you're using the T-72M. It's a little bit worse than even the regular T-72. A big thing with tanks, especially in the late 80s, 90s, and today, isn't the gun, it's the ammo. And the T-72 in the Iraqi force might be the exact same tank that the Soviets are using at the same time. The problem is it doesn't have discarding sabot depleted uranium ammunition. And that's literally like doubles its firepower, at least against tanks. So what a discarding sabot ammunition does, I'll go this super fast here, is you fire your regular 125 millimeter shell. It comes out of the barrel at about 6 times the speed of sound. It's going about a mile a second. Okay, and then the first thing it does as soon as it clears the barrel is that these little sabots, they're like wooden shoes back in the day or whatever. This sleeve kind of falls off of it, either in 2 pieces or 4 pieces or 20 pieces. Or different nations use different designs, but this thing comes off, and now what you're left is about a 45 millimeter dart, a fin stabilized dart of the heaviest metal that that nation can possibly produce. And what we're looking at here is either depleted. Well, most nations use at least tungsten. If they can afford it, they use depleted uranium. This is uranium that used to be in a nuclear reactor, and it's supposedly no longer radioactive, but we've learned otherwise, sadly. Needless to say, it's the heaviest dart of metal that you can possibly fly, that you can possibly send. The trick is that it fired with 125 millimeters worth of power, or 120 in a NATO tank, 125 in a Soviet tank, and now it's going to put all of that power into a penis-sized area about 45 millimeters across. And that thing's going to hit your tank with something like 80 to 120,000 pounds of pressure per square inch. So the physics behind it is EK equals mv squared. So the kinetic energy delivery equals one half of the mass times the velocity squared. It doesn't matter how big your shell is, it's how fast it's moving when it hits you. And it hits at an absolutely insane amount of speed, and it hits in a very, very small area. It will blow a hole through one side of the tank, about that big. About that big. It doesn't. When tanks die, it doesn't happen like in the movies, where the turret flies off. There's a huge explosion and sparks everywhere. Puts a tiny little hole in one side of the tank and puts a tiny little hole that big in the other side of the tank at 6 times the speed of sound, to the point where everything inside that tank, including the people, kind of gets sucked out through that hole that's that big around on the other side of the tank. Tank deaths are a very messy process. And in the Gulf War, there were documented cases of American tanks shooting through dead tanks to kill live ones. The shell would go through a T 55 and keep going, and then hit the T 55 behind it and kill that. To say that this war was unfair is an absolute, an absolute understatement. And we see this here on our table. I've got three platoons of M1s, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Nine platoons of T 72s and six platoons of T 55s. The Americans are outnumbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 1, not including infantry, and I think the Americans are going to walk right over them. But we'll find out. So, to answer the question, how new were or how old were the Iraqi tanks? The Iraqi army had the T-55, which was absolute terrible, way past its prime. But again, that's one of those tanks that's absolutely everywhere. These are these 15As that you see here. The Russians, at this point in history, were really only using them in their Category 3 reserve divisions. So pretty much nobody was using them. At least the Russians weren't. I'm sorry. Everyone uses T-55s. The T-55 is still being used to this day. But their elite Republican Guard, they're almost like the Waffen SS. They're politically favored divisions. They had six divisions total, three mechanized, three armored, roughly. There's a little bit of play there. You have independent brigades and whatever. But the Republican Guard, like the top 25% of their military, technically not army. They weren't in the army. Had the T-72, which is a lot newer, but still terrible. It's the stuff even the Russians didn't want in the 1970s. It's now the early 1990s, and the Iraqis are still using it. On top of that, it doesn't have the good Soviet ammunition in it. It doesn't have any discarding Sabo ammunition, no fin stabilized ammunition, depleted uranium ammunition, and then it just has basic World War II style kaboom, put a bolt of metal on a target kind of ammo. So let me take a quick look at the chat here. See what's going on. Yeah, tough years. They do that. Yeah, you do sign a blank check for your life, and you know what? As far as like one of the reasons I left the military is they never let you forget it. Uh, Not to get too grim about it again, but you're there to stop a bullet, and they remind you of that on a nearly daily basis. Um, I got into a car wreck one time, and I was on light duty for a while, whatever. This little bit of scarring you see on my forehead. I went through a windshield or whatever. And the point of the story is, I nearly got written up for destruction of government property. You are legally government property, and again, they don't, they make no bones about it. To the point where you can get in trouble for taking sick days because you have cost the government money. That's destruction of government property. Again, this is all before 9/11. The military has kind of turned inside out since then. The war on terror, everything else like that. A lot of stuff has changed, hopefully for the better. So, all right, I'm trying to read this on my phone here. Yeah, the Iraqi tanks again. I won't belabor the point anymore. They were actually really really bad compared to what the Americans and also the British. The British had a very comparable tank, the Challenger 2. Were they using Challenger 2s at the time, or they were still using Challenger? Either way, either one. Challenger 1, Challenger 2, it almost doesn't matter. You know, um, it's like you're in a fist fight. Are you up against Batman or Superman? It doesn't matter. Technically, one's more powerful than the other, but in any kind of realistic battlefield condition, and especially in any kind of a gaming term, it doesn't matter. Yeah, the answer is you're dead if you're up against either a Challenger 1 or a Challenger 2. All right, cool. Yeah, so yeah, no worries. We have probably blathered about this stuff for way too long. So here is the full map. Again, every one of these hexes is 150 meters. Every one of these hexes would be about a Flames of War table, or three bolt action tables, to give just some perspective. I should say a 15 millimeter table or a 28 millimeter table, because there are other games besides just those two. Okay, so the Iraqis are pretty much set up here, and the Americans have to try and make an attack. So we're going to do this all super fast. Again, this is going to be a short stream. This is by no means a live sort of a Panzer Leader game. People who follow our channel have seen our 7.5 hour games of Arab-Israeli wars, where we played the Valley of Tears. That took 7.5 hours. We're not going to be on here for 7.5 hours. That was versus Damon. That was in a real live game. And we did in World War II. We did the landings on Gold Beach to commemorate the 75th anniversary of Normandy. That took 9.5 hours. Panzer Leader is a real life game. No, most games of Panzer Leader don't take that long. We're teaching people the rules. They have team play, which means that I have to, regulate more than one player on the other team or whatever. So we would pause to do like quick recording checks or whatever. But yeah, it's we're definitely not doing anything like that today. Okay, so the Iraqis set up. No objective hexes. This isn't like I said, a real game. We're just pushing around some counters and blowing some stuff up. Quick look at all of our counters here. All right, I'm going to lead off with my Abrams, not surprisingly. So again, these are 15 M1A1 Abrams. These are the ones you see on CNN all the time. They have the German-designed 120 millimeter RH-120 main gun. I think the Americans have either built it under license or renamed it the M256 or M356, depending on the generation. So if I zoom in here super fast, again, this counter represents, for those who might not be familiar, represents a platoon of 5 M1A1 Abrams. 54 is the attack factor. Panzer Leader has this kind of a reputation of being a super complicated game. It really isn't. It comes down to four numbers and a letter. Okay, 54 is the attack factor. 20 is the range. 32 is the defense, and I'll explain what that star means in a little bit. And 10 is the movement. And again, what we're talking about here is, let me get this on camera a little bit, is an M1A1 Abrams. So I don't even know what scale this is, but it's pretty big. I don't know, 1 to 35 maybe. It weighs a ton. Some of it's actually metal. These wheels actually do turn. These tracks do operate or whatever. This is the kind of tank that you would see in Desert Storm, at least for the Army. The Marines did not have the M1 yet. We were still using M60A3s, sadly. At least they gave us the Blazer armor, the reactive armor panels. But by Gulf War II, even the Marines had these. So I'll put the radio back in. There we go. Again, the 120 millimeter smooth bore gun, firing some sort of fin stabilized discarding Sabo ammunition. At least that's against tanks. When you're shooting it against infantry, you would fire some sort of a flechette round, HE frag, or weapon like that. And we'll get into how that stuff works at a time, when it comes up in the game. So again, super fast. We're gonna start our movement, and the reason I wanted to go through all that is 10 is my movement. So I can move basically. Here's how complicated Panzer Leader gets. I can move 10 hexes per turn. See how complicated that was? What division brigade are we most modeling in the game? That is an excellent question. And the answer is, I had it. What the hell did I do with it? Oh no. Task Force 137, the 1st Armored, is, again, this is a ridiculously oversimplified playtest. But very, very roughly, I just looked up the Battle of Medina Ridge, Sitrep podcast, is the answer to that question. Medina Ridge, 73 Easting, battles like that are really the only ones that are even kind of worth doing in Panzer Leader. The one exception to that it might be COFG. I do want to do El COFG for the Marine Corps. Number one, it's Marine Corps, so I want to do it and want to do it in real detail. I found some great sources for it at Historicon, so I want to do that battle in real time. You're not up against Republican guards there. However, the Marine Corps again does not have the best equipment, at least compared to the U.S. Army. So the game actually becomes, believe it or not, a little bit more fair. Also, the Iraqis are actually on the attack at Al Kafji, as opposed to the Americans being on the attack. So that game might, from a gaming perspective, might be a little bit more interesting, as well as historical, personal, whatever you want to call it. But anyway, that's the question. Task Force 137, First Armored Division. Believe they were with 7th Corps, but there are other people in the community that probably know that better than me. But I'm going to go ahead and guess 90% that they were with 7th Corps. So now you have battalion, brigade, division, and corps. Tip of the spear, so to speak. This is the middle finger knuckle on Schwarzkopf's left hook. So they move at 10. The only special rule in place here is that when you're on a road, obviously this is a road, as long as you stay on the road, you get to move at double speed. So his 10 would go like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh no, I didn't mean to do that. 5, 6. Watch out for enemy tanks, because this is the kind of game where you can totally move. I'm sorry, you can totally fire in the other guy's turn. In fact, that's half the point. 7, 8, 9, 10. You'll see where once I got off the road, it started to cost me 1 full point per hex I moved into. So as I zoom out here, what we're looking at is the Americans kind of making a left hook. They're not too worried about this Iraqi flank here because there's really nothing out here. These BTRs are nothing. And as far as these more dangerous units in here, T-55, T-72s, BMP-2s with Sagger anti-tank missiles on them. Not Saggers, I'm sorry, AT-5 Spandrel anti-tank missiles. I have to watch out for those. But what I'm doing is I'm using the curvature. Again, this is where the scale really comes into play. I'm using the curvature of the Iraqis' own terrain feature against them. So he is not able to see past his own. Ooh, let me be sure before I say that. I'm talking like I'm all smart here. I'm about ready to get myself shot up. Let me make sure that that guy cannot see me. There's one enemy platoon that I'm a little worried about, or actually enemy company. All right. Yes, and what describes it or what defines it is this brown line right here. Actually, you know what? Just to be safe, I'm going to go down here instead. Now, for damn sure, he can't see me because his line of sight passes through this brown line. This brown line is like a little bit of a razorback, a little bit of a crest in the shoulder of this large ridge that they're deployed upon. And once he crosses that, well, actually, he's on high ground. He sees over that. I'm going to stay undercover just for now. I'm not too worried about him. He only has a 22 in a range of 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He's in range right now, but he can't see me because I'm in woods. Or I should say a palm grove or something. Full disclosure, this map is not even close to accurate. This was literally a map I had on file, and I just grabbed it out of my file and slapped some counters on it. To my knowledge, battlefields like 73 Easting and Medina Ridge didn't have nearly this much cover on it. This battlefield is way too cluttered to be any kind of a historical representation. But again, we're not really going for historical representation on this game here. You want me to move my helicopters first, Gianna? Is that what you're trying to tell me? I do have them. And I do have the Kiowas. I just haven't made them up yet in these in this color scheme. But the Tactical Combat Middle East game that this is loosely based on, I do have them. You want me to move my Cav Scouts out in front? Okay, I'll move my Cav Scouts out in front. Battalion Commander Gianna has just squawked over the radio, and actually Brigade Commander Gianna, because I'm the battalion commander, and has yelled at me to put my scouts out in front. Good call, G. Even though these units are much more vulnerable to Iraqi T-72 fire, if I do lose one, I'm not losing an Abrams. So that's the dirty little secret as far as reconnaissance go. You are effectively an expendable unit. Get my little command team in here and their Humvees. Now, what am I going to do with my helicopters? Seriously. I'm not sending in my Blackhawks yet because there are a lot of um, anti-aircraft defenses for the Iraqis. We have ZU 23-2s. Be careful of these things. They'll make a mess of a helicopter in no short order, or in very short order, I should say. There's another one. Oh, what's this? Gianna's favorite. Don't start having Arma flashbacks. Arma 3 flashbacks. Gianna, these SAMs, these shoulder-fired SAMs, man pads, I think they call them, man portable air defense system. Yeah, they will again make a mess of a not so much an Apache, but a Blackhawk probably. Apache carries a little bit more, is a little more hardened against that kind of thing. So you know what? I'm going to start working on that. I am going to, just to get the stream going here, I'm going to spread out a little bit. So here come my three Apache gunships, or my three pair of Apache gunships. Really, this is like six Apache gunships. Okay, swooping in over this ridge. Okay, I'm trying to use, again, a little bit of this cover. I'm at low altitude, so let me go at the bottom of the hex. Come on. Okay, I'm at low altitude, and that's important because that means I can't move that way. I have to move this way. Low altitude basically means that terrain matters. High altitude means that you're going so high that it doesn't matter. What terrain is between you and your potential target, and potential targets on the ground that might be shooting back at you. So what I'm trying to do here is use altitude to divide the enemy's fire. I still can't do that. See, it's the problem with talking and gaming at the same time. Sometimes I lose track of what I'm doing. Okay, here's the reason I had to make that approach. Again, Panzer Leader tries to be pretty realistic, but in a not a simplistic way, in an easily managed way. Okay, so he's on elevation level 2. So obviously this is 0. This is the base of the table. Elevation level 1, elevation level 2, elevation level 3. We all play miniature games. We all know like how hills are sometimes built in levels on the tabletop. Picture the same thing, okay? Except this table is the size of about 40, bolt action tables. Anyway, I'm trying to get a bead on this position without opening myself up to too many other positions. So because I'm at low altitude, terrain matters. This Razorback, kind of a crest on this ridge, he's set up in a reverse slope position. You can see units immediately behind a terrain feature. Terrain feature is the line, the colored line between hexes. Okay, not the regular black line. It's got some sort of a brown or some other color in there. Okay, so I can see him, he can see me. Line of sight is always a two-way street. However, this guy's on level 1. He can't see past this level 2 obstacle to hit me because I'm at low altitude. If I was at high altitude, we can see each other. He's at 500 feet. He's so high that no terrain really matters. You're basically shooting straight up. But these guys are going low and slow because I'm trying to pick apart the Iraqis a little bit piecemeal here. Because they have a lot of air defense. They have this, they have that, and they have not an OBS window. Stop doing that. They have 3 air defense units just on that one little hilltop. So I'm trying to be. Oh, sorry, and a freaking Shilka. Hello, let's not forget about that. That's probably his biggest one. He's got four. This thing bristles air defense wise. So I'm trying to be a little careful here and not give him too many targets. Okay? I have 6 plus 6 plus 6 equals 18 versus 2. I have to get closer because that's technically an armor piercing weapon. One, two, three, four. I have to get that close. It's an armor piercing weapon, and because it's an armor piercing weapon, that's the A on armor class. It gets cut in half when firing against unarmored targets. This is an unarmored target. This is not a tank. It's not an armored target. It's just like a bunch of guys sitting in chairs getting ready to shoot two 23 millimeter autocannon at me. Bad news for me. He's in an improved position. I have to add 2 to the defense. So now that I'm within um, now that I'm within 4 hexes, I actually get the benefit of that full 6. So it's 6 plus 6 plus 6 equals 18, divided by 2 is 9 to 1. That's how you do it. You add up your total amount of attack, and you divide versus the enemy's defense, and you come up with a ratio. And that ratio determines what table you roll on what we call the kill chart, officially known as the combat results table. So again, Panzer Leader, it seems complicated, and it is complicated, but fundamentally it's very simple. Okay, so there is no 9 to 1 table. You want to hit very, very hard in Panzer Leader. Overkill is underrated. If anything Panzer Leader will ever teach you, it is concentration of firepower. You have to really light up a target. People that try a Panzer Leader and they try, like, what we see in other games where, oh, if you have a shot, take it. I'm going to take some shots over here and some shots over there and some shots over here. No, never do that. Build a plan, come up with a tactic for at least the next couple of turns, mass your forces, and execute against that plan. So I'm at the 9 to 1 table. Sadly for me, there is no 9 to 1 table. The highest, the table basically stops at 7 to 1. So I'm at 7 to 1. I do have to add 2 to the die roll. Oh, that's another thing. And Panzer Leader, low rolls are always better. I would wait until the Iraqis move out to engage. Yeah, I would too, except my ground forces, Gianna cannot reach them this turn. So the Iraqis probably are not going to come out this turn. They're going to come out. I'm going to have to advance against them next turn. And what's going to happen there is I want to have at least some kind of air support that's available. Oh, by the way, I'm not using my Hellfires, obviously. Long story short, I'm going to try and put these AH-64 Apaches in some sort of an Overwatch position so that when they do pop out, they're going to be eating Hellfires for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But in order to kind of pave the way for that, I have to think a couple turns in advance. I'm trying to clean up some of this air defense so that the Iraqis don't have too much coming back at me when I go to do that. So I'm at the 7 to 1 table. I have to add 2 to the die roll because he's in an improved position. If those Apaches were ground targets, they would have to add another one to the die roll for being immediately behind a terrain feature. That's called hull down shielding. Anyone who knows about desert tank combat knows what hull down shielding is. I won't get into it now, but because it doesn't apply, I'm air unit. I'm shooting down from above him, so that hull down shielding doesn't apply. What does apply is his improved position. Improved position, for people unfamiliar, is this. Basically, he's in foxholes, he's in sandbags, he's in some sort of a field works that's giving him a defensive bonus. So, that was a lot of talk. For 7 to 1, add 2 to the die roll. And then it's a 2 that becomes a 4 on add to the die roll. That is easily enough to destroy a that anti-aircraft gun. So first blood's been drawn. None of these other anti-aircraft units can hit me yet because, again, I'm low enough where I'm using their terrain against them. It also means that I can't shoot at them until I move. So that's going to be it for... Again, I'm going to keep my Black Hawk safe for now. Cool. The risk any drinking game is in effect. Don't laugh. I've got a glass of Southern Comfort 100 proof right here. That's become not to espouse certain behavior, but that's become my Twitch streaming standard there. Pour a quick glass of Southern Comfort Black Label. Because streaming and gaming, especially when you're doing it completely on your own, can get very stressful. A lot can go wrong. OBS is a very nasty piece of software, and it helps to be a little bit mellow. Oh, I thought I had one of these up here. And sorry, G, to fully answer your previous question, the primary unit on the enemy side, as far as like what divisions and brigades we're recreating here, very, very loosely. 2nd Brigade, Medina Division, Republican Guard. Mellow is good. Okay, now we got Because Science Teacher and Because Movie. Awesome. Because Science Teacher, just let me know if the sound is okay. The last 2 streams, the sound has not been okay. The Poland stream and the Australian tank stream in Vietnam. I tested it before the stream started today, and it sounded a lot better. So hopefully, I got whatever it was fixed. Okay, so that's pretty much going to be it for the American turn. The Iraqi turn. The Iraqis don't really have to move. I don't know if they're going to. I don't really think they should. I mean, I could push them out there just for the sake of the stream, so we could, see something happen. But that would literally lead to their almost instant annihilation. If they're all because okay, I can't see guys at the moment because they're all undercover. They're all in some sort of a tree, or like this guy I can see, but he's behind some terrain, so I can't quite see him yet. But he is in the open. Most of these guys are actually in the open. So I'll just do a little bit of house cleaning real quick. BTR, unload infantry. Pretty please. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4 to come out of that wadi. So again, 1, 2, 3, 4. Because it cost me extra movement to come out of that wadi. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, can't go that fast. Russian armor is slow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 up the slope. Let's get some reinforcements up here. Tell you what, just so the stream doesn't get boring, I'll say that this Iraqi commander is, again, normally this would be, between a couple of players. We're just playtesting here. T-72s have a movement of 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the gully. So they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He can't quite make it. All right, he's not going to go then. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. It's Gianna time. SA-7's out of the woods. Oh, he's blocked by terrain. Oh, we almost had another shot. We almost had a quick missile shot on that Apache. There are more SAMs hiding here in this brush. This guy can take a shot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He's going to take a shot. 12 versus 22. Okay, the reason this anti-aircraft gun can take a shot and this anti-aircraft missile can't, he's 2 levels higher. Again, it's a 3-dimensional battle space. So he sees over these trees and this intervening terrain right here to see that helicopter. He's on ground level 0. He's on the floor, so to speak. And his line of sight takes him through all this mess and then those trees. So because those Apaches are a low altitude, this terrain blocks for this SAM-7 battery here. Or it's not really a battery, SAM-7 section. This ZU-23-2 anti-aircraft battery, however, is parked up on a ridge. He sees right over the rest, the forward slope of his ridge and those desert trees on the floor of the desert there, and he's got a clear line of sight, and he is in range. His shot isn't great, but he's going to take it. He's at extreme range. It's 12 minus 22. I'm sorry. 12 divided by 22. Again, you take the enemy, you take the shooter's attack, you take the defender's defense, you divide it, you come up with a ratio, and that ratio tells you what to do, or tells you what column you're rolling on the combat results table. So as you can see, before I was rolling on the 7 to 1 table. Now I'm rolling on the 1 to 2 table for the Iraqis. Welcome to Gulf War 1. Nevertheless, the Iraqis can probably disrupt one of those helicopter elements. If they roll a 1 or a 2, is the best shot they've got. Nevertheless, they're going to give it a shot. See what happens. That is a 2. That are 2. So a D is what they call in Panzer Leader disperse, and X is a kill. But they did score a 2. The Iraqis got a lucky shot on those Apaches. And we do have some Apaches that are disrupted at the moment. The term is dispersed in Panzer Leader. It's like a pin in most other games. You can't really pin a helicopter. But that helicopter is having some problems. He's going to have to rally. One of the helicopters has been hit. Maybe one of the engines is smoking with his tail rotors rattling around a little bit. He's got some problems due to Iraqi ground fire. So what I'm starting to set up here is a little bit of a hook around the flank of the Americans. Again, it's probably a dumb move on the Iraqis' part, but again, just so that something happens in the stream that's fun to watch. Any other housekeeping back here? Yes, these guys are going to move forward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can I do better? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll go there. Just for fun. Those BTRs were pretty fast. Okay, so let's zoom out for the big battalion commander's view. So we got a battle space that's about a couple miles wide here. We've got a very powerful and now being reinforced Iraqi position here, 2nd Brigade Medina Division. Meanwhile, you've got some elements of an old Army division here. You can tell they're Army because they're carrying T-55s. They're starting to get a little, I'll go ahead and say it, they're starting to get a little ballsy. They're gonna back up these T-72s. Maybe they're inspired by the Republican Guard comrades, and they're gonna try and make some sort of a hook. The problem is these Blackhawks are gonna see them, and those Blackhawks can't exactly stop them. But they do have these things aboard those Blackhawks called radios, and they can radio ahead to these guys over here and let them know that there's some bad news coming. Right now, none of these American ground units can see those T-72s because they have intervening terrain, intervening sand dunes. Once those T-72s get too close to the sand dune, they start to crest it in a hull down position. I can see them, and I will open fire with tows. The Iraqis will get a bonus because they're hull down, but they're going to have to think long and hard before they do that. That's going to wrap up the Iraqis' turn. Again, I don't propose that we play a full game here, guys. I'm literally just pushing around some counters. I made up these counters literally this morning, so I have no idea how well they're going to work. What about the berm? We are well past the berm. Are we talking about the berm along the border? Gianna? If so, depending on how high the berm is, the berm would be represented by either a man-made version of these lines here, or a thicker version where it's these more golden shaped lines. I know what berm you're talking about. Again, we would be well past that. Again, we're fighting Republican Guard. So this is like day 3 of the 4-day war, maybe even day 4. We are well into the left hook. Notice the Americans are kind of coming in from the southwest, driving to the northeast. They're heading for the they're heading for the Basra Highway. In front of the AS gun, in front of the I'm sorry, I can't have it. Oh, in front of the AA gun. Oh, you're talking about this line. Yeah, he can see over that. Again, in on a desert table using the Arab-Israeli war rules, if you are good question. All right, so take a shot because I'm going to say it. let me zoom in a minute. All right. On a serious note, though. Okay, so just as for a quick demonstration here, I'll fix this in a moment. All right, so these two units are trying to see each other. Okay, they cannot see each other. They're both on the ground and they have terrain between them. Okay, very very simple. Boom. Those two those two teams can see each other. Okay, and the reason they can see each other is because he is right up against the intervening terrain feature. The terrain feature is the brown line between hexes. More than the terrain in the hex actually, for game purposes. So this line between the two hexes here is what really decides whether there's line of sight or not. Again, desert terrain tends to be much more gentle and shallow and flat than mountainous terrain or temperate terrain. There's no huge mountains here. This is basically a desert, so it's pretty flat. But what we have here is draw a line of sight between the two hexes. Always go center dot to center dot. That's why there's a dot in the center of every hex. Okay, so that line of sight does cross an intervening line. Oh, that blocks line of sight. No, it doesn't, because the shooter is right up against it. So this is that unit pretty much bellied up against that terrain and trying to peek over it. Now the terrain still does have an effect. This unit here, shooting against this unit here, has no penalty. He's literally shooting down over top of his own cover, straight down the slope, and these poor guys are parked out in the middle of the open field on flat terrain. They're going to get murdered. Conversely, this guy here on the floor is trying to shoot up the slope, has to cross that cover bonus. And what's going to happen there is this target unit is going to get what's called hold down shielding. He's going to get a +2 in this case on his die roll, which anyone who plays Panzer Leader is going to know that's a pretty serious bonus. So there is line of sight between those hexes, but it's not equal. He's able to see this guy with no problems. This guy trying to shoot back up the slope can't see him. Again, line of sight's always a two-way street. You can see him. The problem is he's going to get a pretty big defense bonus because, again, not only does he have improved position, but he's also hold down shielding. So I take that back. It would be a +4 in this case. On a D6, that's a huge, huge bonus. But, yeah, that's actually a great question. Now, if that unit was one hex back, now he's not bellied up against that terrain feature. There's no line of sight at all. So, long story short, this Zu-23 battery can totally see these Apaches, and vice versa. Those Apaches can totally see that Zu-23. No, no worries at all. That's the name of the rule is hold down shielding. And again, from El Alamein to Yom Kippur War to Gulf War 91, that is huge. Desert combat, especially desert tank combat, is all about hold down shielding. Because there's no real. I mean, I made this board pretty cluttered just to make it interesting or whatever. But there's not a lot of towns. There's not a lot of trees. It's a desert. You're basically playing on a pool table. Every little ripple in the ground, even if it's only 3 or 4 feet, a skilled tank commander can use that to hide at least a third, if not half, of his tank. There's also, let me go ahead and get the webcam going here. All right, so hold down shielding is, I know the way it's drawn on the map, but the way it's drawn on the map it's drawn on the way it's drawn on the map the way it is for the sake of clarity. But what's really going on here is you have a very, very gentle rise in the terrain that sort of peaks, and where it peaks is where the line is indicated on the map. But what you're really doing is you are looking at a terrain feature. I use that term loosely. You're a very, very slight, it's not a ridge, it's not a crest. You can't see it if you're standing there unless you have like surveying tools or engineering tools. It is that imperceptible. But there are actual uneven undulations, so to speak, in that desert terrain. And with use of laser rangefinders and again engineering tools, surveying tools, a very, very skilled tank commander or tank unit commander is going to be able to say, okay, look, That terrain, even though you can't really see it with the naked eye, actually does sort of peak 5 feet or so, 500 yards that way. Set up your tank line here. It looks like you're parked in the middle of, completely open terrain, but you're really not, because from that direction, 1,000 yards out, you're shooting across that very, very imperceptible kind of a hump in the ground. That again, if you were standing there in real life, you probably couldn't even see. Again, without some sort of surveying tool. But once you get good at using that terrain, that little bit of a terrain, it looks like you're standing in the open, but you're not. You're actually half hidden behind, I don't want to say curvature of the earth, because that's a huge exaggeration, but you're kind of hidden behind this very imperceptible or barely perceptible irregularity in the desert terrain. And that's hull down shielding. So it's not like this desert actually has all these jagged lines, kind of staggered around in the middle of the sand. This just shows where the desert floor isn't really as flat as the naked eye would have you believe. Is the long and short of that one. And now these ones here, these razorbacks here on these ridges are going to be a lot more perceptible. You would totally see that if you were saying they're on that ridge. But the game effect is roughly the same. To give you an idea about how minor these floor dunes are that give you hold down shielding or block line of sight if you're not right up against them, you would have noticed earlier when I was moving my T-55s and T-72s, they have no effect on movement. The tank driver passes over them, doesn't even know that they're there. That's how slight these irregularities are in the desert floor. So now we're over to the American turn 2. Okay, the American turn 2. The American turn 2. The American turn. Oh! Oh! Okay, Gianna, hold on. Here we go. I have T-72s in the open. I have T-55s in the open. And I have Apaches with Hellfire anti-tank missiles. So guess what's going to happen? Guess what's going to happen? All right. Again, just for clarity, an American TOW or Hellfire has a 50 G20. The range is 20. It's a G class attack factor. That stands for guided. And it's 50 is the attack strength. And each one of these Apaches gets to shoot that twice. The one Apache that isn't able to fire that at this time is this one that is, or this pair, that is disrupted right now. They're still trying to put out fires in the cockpit. But these two guys, actually these two pair, are going to go ahead and start cooking off some anti-tank missiles at these fools over here. And OBS, I really wish you would stop doing that. Those annoying little windows that pop up in the middle of my desert there. Okay, so we're well within 20 range. Gs have a minimum range of 2. You can't fire them from within 300 meters most of the time. That's a slight oversimplification, but it's a game. Um, and so another thing that G weapons do is that they never double, they never have. Range doesn't matter. If you get hit by a tow missile or by a Hellfire or by an AT-5 Spandrel, it's a missile, it's a rocket. It's going to be traveling at the same speed no matter what. So that's the reason for the different weapons classes as opposed to A's versus G's versus H's. They all interact with each other a little differently. And the number is still the number, but the reason it also has that letter in there is that it also tells you when you get a benefit, when you don't get a benefit, when you get a penalty, when range matters, when it doesn't. Different kinds of targets give you a bonus, different kinds of targets give you a penalty, and so on. Basically, the strength is the actual number, but then that letter is what gives it a little bit of a nuance that describes the exact properties of the class of weapon that we're talking about. So these two flights, or these two pair of AH-64 Apaches, are going to open fire on some T-72s. Each one of them has 50 G strikes, so that's going to be 100 points. All right, how many T-72s do I want to engage? Divided by 18. No, divided by... I'm going to take 50 divided by 18. Oh, that stinks. Well, these are T-72s. Super fast. The reason these guys can see these T-72s and these guys can't, even though they're both shooting over these dunes, these guys are airborne. That's actually a pretty crappy shot. I wonder if I want to take it. You know what? We don't want the stream to last all day. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and fire some Hellfires at some T-72s. 100 divided by 18 times 2 is, that's gonna be not quite 3 to 1, isn't it? Damn it. 18 plus 18 is what, 36, guys? 2.7 to 1. You know what? I'm gonna hold off. I don't want to waste my Hellfires. We see you coming. We could kill some of you now, but we want to kill more of you later. And those Hellfires don't grow on trees. So we're going to go ahead and wait for now. Okay, so first thing that happens, American air phase. This technically isn't the air phase. Direct fire phase. I'm not firing these missiles. None of these guys really have line of sight. We go to American. Okay, to finish up the American attack phase, we're going to try and rally that Apache gunship. A 2, he rallies with no problem whatsoever. Now, do I want to move? American units can fire and then move half if they are considered a turreted AFV or an aircraft. Obviously, these Apaches are aircraft, so they can move half their movement. Okay, so what they're going to do is they're going to do like the cavalry roll that Gianna was talking about earlier. They're going to roll up on these fools, and they're going to go ahead and spot. Once a unit, even if you're undercover, once an enemy unit is adjacent to you, you're considered spotted. We see you hiding there in the woods. You're not invisible. These aren't T-72 predators. Once we're next to you, we can see you. The problem is I just got really close to a whole bunch of enemy stuff. Again, low altitude. Okay, other American movement. I'm going to go ahead and get aggressive now before these T-72s get too close. If I just sit here and wait, what could happen is if I let these T-72s and T-55 set up on me, then I'll get caught in a pincer between this force coming out of the northeast and this force coming out of the east. And I don't want to do that. So I'm going to bounce and actually attack in open tank combat before those jaws get too close. I'm pretty much going to try what Napoleon tried at Waterloo on a much smaller scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. These guys can shoot too far. Damn. Well, hey, if they shoot, then they're spotted. Oh, by the way, they're already spotted, so they're probably going to shoot at me anyway. I dare them to. 1, because I'm on a road. 2, 3, 4, 5, coming out of a gully. 6, 7, 8. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They still can't see me because of this intervening terrain, and neither of us are bellied up against it, so to speak. Those fools saw all that, so they're going to go ahead and take what's called opportunity fire. 66 versus 32. 1, 2, 3. So Iraqi tanks are pretty terrible. Again, they don't have the Sabo ammunition. Whether A-class weapon uses the first or second modifier on this table, I misspelled table there, depends on the nationality of the unit as well as the year of the scenario. Iraqis use the better values in 1991 and only with T-72s. Okay, so I got to be careful here. They do have some good ammo. A versus A, they double out to half of their range. So that 22 on their number doubles to 44 within 5 hexes. I got to make sure I'm not within 5 hexes. One, two, three, four, five. Okay, so that 22 does not double to 44. We're looking at a grand total of 66 versus 32. That is 2 to 1 odds. That's actually pretty damn awful. Holy crap. Okay, they're gonna probably disperse one platoon of of M1s. Oof. A 6. They missed. Okay, so if we look at the 2 to 1 table, we'll see that he could have killed me. He damn sure should have pinned me, but once he rolls a 6 on the 2 to 1 table, you guys see that right there? Those Iraqis missed. So I got away with that one. Oh, by the way, these guys have now fired. That's their fire phase. We already knew they were spotted, but when their turn comes around, they will not be able to fire. They took their fire phase early and missed. So that was very lucky for me. These T-55s can't see me through this terrain feature here. So I got away with that one. One, two, three, four, five. And because I only moved half of my movement, I can now dismount. I'm not worried about these T-72s right now because they've already taken their shot. These T-55s pose actually no damage, no threat because there's terrain between us. But even if they weren't, T-55s have a different curve, so to speak, on that weapons effectiveness chart. They only double out to 2 hexes and out past half of their range, which is 8. So between 1 and 2, they have 30 each. That 15 becomes 30. At 3 and 4, they get the 15. Anything over half their range, 8, half of 8 is 4. So ranges 5, 6, 7, and 8, they get cut in half. They have 1959 ammunition. That probably doesn't even explode half the time. Basically, they have World War II ammunition and a 100 millimeter gun. These guys at least have some kind of Cold War ammo. They don't have what I have, but at least they have something. And that those rules again were on that weapons effectiveness chart that I was showing you guys earlier. The problem is the American force here is so small. What am I doing with my Blackhawks? You know what, just for fun, one, two, three, four, five, six, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. Not that helicopters are fast or anything. Yeah, I think I made the. I think I made these guys a little. You know, they're going to swing the other way rather than swinging around this way to the west. They're going to swing to the east. They're going to wind up over here somewhere. So again, I gave the Iraqis a lot of air defense. There's a Shoka platoon in there. There's this battery guys over here. There's this guy over here. There's another Strela over there. I might lose one Blackhawk, but we will see what happens. Low altitude, so blocked, blocked, blocked. Actually, no, he's on the high ground. Anyway, he's also out of range, so no worries there. Cool. All right, before this turn gets completely disorganized, just get my Humvees up there. Keep an eye on things. All right, Iraqi turn. These guys have already fired. These guys have no line of sight. These guys don't have any line of sight. He's already on that level. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because he's crossing that gold line. That's too much. Damn it! These Iraqi vehicles are slow. Damn you! Unload. Unload. Cool. So, in case you guys, are unfamiliar with Panzer Leader, or you haven't figured it out yet, when the infantry unit or whatever the passenger unit is on top of the carrying unit, he's considered unloaded. So, like this guy's unloaded, this guy is unloaded, this guy's unloaded. This guy is still loaded because the infantry unit is underneath the passenger unit. Oh, sorry, the passenger unit is underneath the carrying unit. So that's how you indicate that the unit is still loaded inside the carrying vehicle. These platoons have bailed out of the Bradleys and they're ready to start fighting on foot, depending on what happens. So those T-55s, 15 of them just thundered over this ridge and barreled down the other side of the ridge, right underneath those Apaches, and ducked into the woods. Those Apaches could have fired if they wanted to. The problem is they're within 2 hexes, so they're too close to fire Hellfires. Hellfires can only have, Hellfires do have a minimum range. I could have fired chain guns at them, but that would be my fire phase, and I'm saving my fire phase for my Hellfires next turn. That's the reason the Iraqi player got away with that. By the way, this is absurd. We're just going to have some fun. We're going to see what happens here. Just for fun, and then probably ramp up the stream. By the way, we're giving the Iraqis a lot of credit as far as how gutsy they are. I am not exactly role playing the actual performance or aggressiveness of the Republican Guard divisions, which was more or less non-existent in history. But we're going to see what happens if they were a little bit more brave and came out to actually attack. Like Gianna was saying earlier, wait for them to come out and engage you. They really didn't. They really didn't. They had to go in there and get, American armor, American Apaches, American B-52s. They had to go in there and root them out. American A-10s. All right, let's wrap things up here by having a little bit of fun. The split move and fire turn. The split move and fire rule that I was talking about earlier, where an American tank can fire and then move up to half of its movement. The Iraqis do not get the benefit of that rule. A lot of quote unquote lower class armies don't get the benefit of that. The French in 1940, the Soviets in 1941 and 42, the Syrians or Egyptians and most of the Arab-Israeli wars, they don't get the benefit of that rule. That's only for a relatively highly trained armored force. One thing that the Iraqis will do is they will take a poke with this, another poke with this anti-aircraft battery, and they'll try and take a shot at, again, their friends over here. They got it too. He's dispersed again. That guy's actually doing pretty good. He's doing his part. He actually this anti-aircraft unit right here just saved some T-72s. Just saved a few lives probably. Okay, it's the American fire phase now. The first part of the rule, or I should say the first part of a Panzer leader turn is technically the air phase. And I know we have aircraft on the board, and you're like, why aren't you using the aircraft during the air phase? When Panzer leader says air phase, they're not talking about helicopters. And I know that sounds crazy. Just, kind of bear with me. Air phase is like off-board assets. B-52s, A-10s, Sturmovix, depending on your era, P-47 Thunderbolts, who knows what, Stukas. That's aircraft that come from off the table. You get only so many strikes per game, and you put the strikes where you want them, depending on what you have spotted, and you go ahead and you execute them that way. That's what they mean by air phase. Helicopters, the way Panzerleader chooses to handle them, they're almost like very, very fast ground units. They're under, and that's not so much, they fly, they don't go on the ground. It has nothing to do with their physical reality. It has more to do with their command and their tactical reality. This is how they're used, and more importantly, this is who owns them. These kind of helicopters are under command of the either battalion or brigade commander in the field. Maybe regimental commander, depending on the unit or whatever. But as far as an air unit, they're U.S. Air Force. They're not only not in your unit, they're another whole branch of the service. They wear different uniforms. They're a totally different. They live in a different world. They try to help you. Obviously, that's the whole point of air support. But you have to call an Air Force guy. You have to call your battalion commander, your brigade commander, your division commander. He's got to call somebody in the Air Force. If you're lucky, you've got an FOC with you, or whatever the term is for it, an FAC, and he'll be able to coordinate for you. That's basically an Air Force guy embedded in your unit with you. His job is basically to talk to his friends in the Air Force. Anyway, much ado about nothing. That's the purpose of handling helicopters, and even though helicopters are aircraft, they handle them as ground units. Sort of. When I say air phase, I'm talking about actual aircraft. In this game, F-16s, A-10 Warthogs, and B-52s. And yes, what's the name of the game? Tactical Command Middle East, TCME. They're the company that actually tried to update Panzerleader into the 1990s and 2003 Iraqi Freedom Wars. They do include B-52s. I am borrowing a little bit of their rules for this expansion. Again, it's mostly Panzerleader, Arab-Israeli Wars, and Tactical Command Middle East. This is kind of a Frankenstein mishmash of three different editions of the Panzer leader family. So airface, basically there is no airface. Relax, those Apaches are totally going to get to do something. Now comes the direct fire phase. Direct fire phase. These guys have no line of sight. Oh wait, yes they do. They see these guys. Why? Because these Apaches have them spotted. Also, they fired at me. Either way, I see them. These guys, I see them. These guys, see them. See, oh yeah, these T-72s are in a lot of trouble. All right, so who wants to see some T-72s blow up? Let me know in the chat. Who wants to see some T-72s light up? We have down here tow missiles. Down here, tow missiles. Down here, tow missiles. A whole company of M1 Abrams tow missile. I should Hellfire missiles. Hellfire missiles. So tow missile from M2 Bradley number 1, 50. Tow missile from M2 Bradley number 2, 50. Tow missile from M2 Bradley number 3, 50. Then I have 54 out of my M1 Abrams, but those are A class and they're using 1991 ammunition. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I am within half range. Those 54s get doubled to 108s, and there's three of them. 108 plus 108 plus 108. They say there's no kill like overkill. I think that's enough though. 470 474 divided by 54. Eh, I have to add one to my die roll for his woods. You know what? I'm going to take a little bit off of that. I'm going to take a little bit off of it. I'm going to go BMP hunting as well. This BMP is making me nervous. That BMP does carry a guided anti-tank missile himself. And I don't want him around next turn to shoot up some of my Bradleys. Actually, that AT-5 Spandrel will make a mess of my Bradleys. So, I gotta take him out. Unfortunately for me, he's only a BMP, but he's in an improved position and he's hull down. He's gonna be tougher to kill than it looks. One tow missile, or I should say one platoon of Bradleys, is going to fire a tow missile against them. That's 50 versus 6. That's going to give me 7 to 1. That's as high as the table goes. Everybody else is going to start shooting at these guys, which I think still gives me 7 to 1. Back to Stalin. Man, these guys are going to get blown into more than Stalin. They're going to get blown back to, I don't know who. They're going to get blown past Saddam, past Stalin. I don't know where these guys are going to land. They're going to they're going to land somewhere bad. Let me do a little bit of retroactive Iraqi movement just for fun. Okay. Still no line of sight. Doesn't really affect anything. But it sets things up better for next turn. Okay, so tow missile heading up the ridge to hit this guy. It is 50. Again, tow missiles are always 50, G20. They never double for range bonuses. They do have a minimum range, but I'm past that. So it's 50 divided by 6. 6 is the defense factor. That is 7 to 1. That's as high as the table goes. I have to add 1 to the die roll because he's a Soviet AFV behind in hold down position, behind that brown line. And I have to add 2 for his improved positions. So he basically has what the Israelis used to call like firing slopes. They're like these big rock and brick positions they would build in reverse slope positions on the Golan Heights. And that would basically, almost like a foxhole for a tank, is probably the best way I can put that. Gives him a nice defensive bonus. I'm on the biggest column there is. I'm on 7 to 1. But I do have some pretty bad penalties to shoot against. So 7 to 1, add 3 to the die roll. That is a 3. That became a 7. Sorry, 3 plus 3 is a 6. I think a 6 is still a kill. Barely. Yeah, I did kill him, but barely. So there's the 7 to 1 column. I rolled a 3. I have to add 1 because of his hold down shielding. I have to add 2 more for his position, so it's a total of 3. Therefore, that 3 gets read as a 6. And a 6 on the 7 to 1 table, as you guys can see right here, oh, I'm sorry, right down there, is an X. It is a kill, but barely. A 4, he would have survived. But he did not survive. And we get to put on the table one of my favorite things about Panzer Leader, a rec counter. A rec counter is placed wherever a armored unit is eliminated. You have to be an armored unit to generate a rec counter. Trucks, infantry, artillery, etc., do not generate rec counters. And they more than just look cool, they also act as terrain. So you're allowed to have 3 units in a hex, ever. That's the maximum you're ever allowed to have in a stack. Or, I'm sorry, the maximum number of units you're ever allowed to have stacked in a single hex. The problem is that armored units that are destroyed cause rec counters, and rec counters stack towards that stacking limit. You can actually clog up a battlefield with rec counters in really, really big games. You gotta watch out for that. It won't make much of a difference here, but it is part of the rules. So I'm going to go ahead and put a rec counter there. Plus, they just look cool. And the BMP is technically an armored vehicle. So that's his. I won't bother keeping track because again we're almost done here, folks. But in a real game, you would have to actually track which one of these Bradleys fire tow missiles. They only have so many. Then they have to go back to that 25 millimeter Bushmaster, which again that's the 6AC class gun we see on the top there. It's a lot. You can still kill BMPs with it, but it's a lot harder than with a tow missile. I won't lie to you. I pretty much wasted that tow missile. It's a kind of a waste to use a tow missile against a BMP. You saw how easy it was. I mean, I literally just shot at him and I was on the maximum column. But again, he was in a bad position. Next turn, he would get to shoot his AT-5 Spandrel against any of these guys down here, or even against these Abrams, and maybe get a kill. Some Iraqi weapons are dangerous, especially if they have good position and they use them from good positions, and they use them in large numbers. You got to be careful. Also, if this was a real game, guys, I mean, no shit. In fact, this is the way it normally is worked in Tactical Command Middle East. The victory conditions are so one-sided, it's not even funny. Number of American M1 Abrams that were lost in Gulf War I to enemy fire is basically 0. I think there were a couple that were damaged and caught on fire to like RPG fire or flanking T-72 fire, and they were badly damaged, and they got them back to the battalion repair point, and they said, you know what, it's not even worth the money to fix it. So technically, I think there are like a handful. And when I say handful, I mean like 2 or 1 or maybe 3. But these are battlefield damages that they said, you know what, it's not really worth it. Nobody died in those tanks. Nobody was terribly badly injured in those tanks, at least for M1 Abrams. Other vehicles, that's a different story, sadly. So again, in a good historical game, the victory conditions are based on the historical results. You set up the battle as best you can, then you play the battle hands free, and you see what happens. With both players, trying new tactics and doing the best they can, good die roll, bad die roll. But what you want to do is do better than, or at least not do worse than, your historical counterpart. So if even one of these M1 platoons gets brewed up, that's a platoon of 5. If one unit gets knocked out, I have now done worse than the historical commander. That's game. The Iraqis win. The Iraqis can be tabled, absolutely tabled, if the Americans lose one M1 Abrams platoon. That's it. Game over for the Americans. You've lost. You've lost badly. So you have to, the game's very one-sided. Obviously, one side has all the powerful weapons, all the good tanks, it's a rout. But why you even want to play the Iraqis is, again, you only have to do 1 or 2 very, very. You have to basically live and maybe kill one American unit. And if you can do that, that's victory. Because that's more than the Iraqis could do historically. So if you beat the Iraqis historically, you, as a player in a game, you won. Long story short, that was the reason I wanted to get rid of that BMP. And I kind of squandered a toe on it. And I am talking too much and gaming too little. So, M2 Bradley platoon in, or I should say troop, since it's technically cavalry. Bradley troop in Hex 2214 fires off his toe. Troop in the Hex down here in 2117 fires off his toe. Again, 3 platoons of M1 Abrams shooting up that slope. No intervening terrain. I see over these trees because he's way up high. All right, that's going to be 108 plus 108 plus 108. Good grief. Divided by 54. Yeah, I'm still on the 7 to 1 table. I have to add one to the. I have to add one for his trees. He is not in an improved position, and he is not immediately behind any intervening hex side, so he's not hull down. So he's pretty much right on top of a hill. He's not tucked in behind a ridge where he's getting pace of cover. He's way too high. He's parked way up on top of the hill. Now, if he was here, that would be a different story. I would have this brown hex side right here to offer me partial cover. But he's up in this hex. I do have to take off one for my roll, however, for those trees. So 7 to 1. Let me go ahead and get my dice box going here. 7 to 1. Add 1 to the die roll. This is a lot of firepower coming up that hill. I didn't even fire my 2 Apaches, you'll notice. And that is a 2 that becomes a 3. Oh, man. Stop me when this starts to look familiar. Alright, that is 3 platoons of burning T-72s there. What are those Apaches going to do now? Those Apaches are going to start throwing Hellfires into these T-55s. So again, we're airborne, plus we're on higher elevation. We see over these trees. We can start. I can't really hit these guys; they're too close. But I can't. Also, they're also in woods, and I'm not adjacent. But I can hit these guys that are out here in the open. So Hellfire, Hellfire. That's 50 plus 50 is 100. I'm going to go ahead and attack 2 of these guys at 4 to 1 odds. So you guys realize how you guys kind of follow how I got it. 50 and 50. That's 100, and I'm engaging 2 12s. 2 12s is 24. 24 goes into 100 4 times and change. You always round off in favor of the defender, 4 to 1. Panzer Leader normally plays a lot. Oh, they survived! Hellfires, you failed me. Panzer Leader normally plays a lot faster than this, guys. But again, I'm talking with you guys, I'm chatting, explaining how rules work. I'm playing both sides. I'm explaining the tactics behind all my moves. A game like this, you could normally play in like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And that's a 10-turn game. Okay, that was a little disappointing. Okay, last thing for the attack phase. The Americans are going to try and rally that Apache that keeps getting pinned down. A 6, I'm sorry, a 3, he rallies. Americans are morale A. Iraqis are morale C because they're Republican Guard. Regular Iraqi army is morale D. They're really bad. Okay, now Americans are going to move half movement wherever applicable. They're going to go ahead and do that for their vehicles. I'm still a little worried about all this stuff. I don't want to lose an Apache. So in order to be eligible for opportunity fire, you have to move a quarter of your movement in the enemy's line of fire. So for a Black Hawk, a quarter of my movement is basically 9. 34 divided by 4. is like 8.5 or whatever, so that runs up to 9. So I can move 9 hexes before I even have to worry about it. So I will take some ground fire here, but not until after I land and drop off infantry. So a Black Hawk is bad enough, but I don't want to lose a Black Hawk with a platoon of infantry in the Black Hawks. Obviously, this is more than one Black Hawk. Black Hawks do not carry a platoon of riflemen. So an entire air cavalry platoon just dropped down on this ridge behind the Iraqis. Now the Iraqis are going to get a poke at them with their guns. I have 2 batteries of ZU-23-2s that do have range. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That do have range and do have line of sight. 24, 12 plus, damn it, OBS, stop doing that. 12 plus 12 versus 16 is the defense on one of those Blackhawks. So it's 1-to-1 odds. 5, they missed again. The Blackhawks managed to do that, and they took some ground fire, but no worries. And that is him spotted, and that is him spot. Well, he was already spotted, but that's these 2 units spotted, and they've taken their opportunity fire. Hold on. Ungroup, please. Thank you very much. I'm a little worried about these T-55s blasting one of my Bradleys, so at least I'm going to get him to where he's hold down. He has hold down shielding. Tanks. Oh, you know what? Before you get completely blown up by somebody, again, it's never fun to lose an APC. You definitely don't want to lose an APC with infantry still inside. That's literally you losing 2 units at once, and that's a very high body count, narrative-wise. So infantry get out. There are tanks about, tanks and anti-tank missiles about. Get out of the APC. Okay, cool. Again, this is all part of their movement. Even though they fired, they can spend half their movement. It takes half their movement to unload. He was already unloaded. That's why he was able to do that. This guy up here. These Brad. This is my big fist right here. I only have 3 of them. This is my whole tank force. This one stack. I've already fired, but I can move up to half. You know what I'm going to do? No, I'm not going to do that. Because if I did that, he gets to just blast away at me for free next turn without moving. I'm going to stay behind this cover and make him come to me. If he wants to overrun me, he's going to have to pay for it. Okay, let's go to Iraqi turn, and then we'll wrap up this game here. All right, the Iraqis are going to have one last hurrah here. Again, in a game this small, Panzer leader being Panzer leader, you really have one big shot. So yeah, Damon might be able to back me up on this when Damon comes in the stream. Official Risk Any Drink game coming to Hassel.com. Oh my god. You're going to start getting shot glasses with my stupid catchphrases on there? They're not catchphrases. They're things I say too often because I'm a terrible public speaker. Um, oh no, don't do it. Don't do it. Slow smoked ribs. Oh, Nova Templar, you're making me so hungry right now. I'm going to have to satisfy myself on a feast of bone and blood when these T-72s try to overrun me. All right, Novus Templar, hopefully you come back from your ribs before we do this. If not, no worries. You can catch it on the replay. All right, so where was I? Okay, so in Panzer Leader, It's not a game where you have like a different plan every turn. And you do this, oh, next turn I'll try that, and turn three, let me try this other strategy. You have to sit down with the map, take a look at it, take an hour, take a half hour, take a few minutes, and come up with a plan. Because you're really going to get one big swing. This is command tactical level combat, at least academically and vicariously, the way it quote unquote really happens. Um, you don't get to change your mind in the middle of a firefight. You have one move, and you have to really execute against that move. So the Iraqis are pretty much, especially in a game that's small, so the Iraqis are going to go ahead and take their big move right now. They're direct fire phase. They don't really have too much fire to do. These T-55s can shoot at the M1s. I think they will. All three of these T-55s are going to fire at the M1s. That's 45 against 32. That is 1-to-1 odds, barely. And the reason they're going to do that is I'm hoping to pin down at least one of them. If, as the Iraqi player, if I can pin down at least one of them, then when these guys all go to overrun this platoon, it'll be a little bit easier. There'll be one less battery, or well, not battery, one less platoon of M1s shooting back at me. This is fire and maneuver. This is Panzer Leader rewarding you for, what's the word here? Panzer Leader rewarding you for actually executing real world tactics. You can't just bum rush somebody. I mean, you can, but you're going to get absolutely curb stomped, especially with modern weapons. You have to put fire down on that target, pin at least some of them down, and then rush with somebody else. Why? Because Panzer Leader, like most good war games, prohibits you from firing and moving in the same turn. You do most of your firing in the enemy's turn. You do your movement during your turn. That's the way most good war games work. The exception being games like this, where the Americans can move and fire most of their units, but even that is limited. Only some units can do it, and they can only move half. And that's because they're the best of the best with, a $1 billion army. Most armies cannot do that. So, anyway, long story short, oh, there we go, I said it again. I gotta break that stupid habit. T-55s are going to take a poke at some M1s. That just sounds sad. But they're the Iraqis. They're desperate. They're trying to cover their friends. 45, 315s versus 32. That is 1-to-1 odds. That asterisk there, after their 32, their defense, means that they get a bonus against guided weapons. That's Chobham armor. That's laminate armor, Chobham armor, some sort of composite armor that is specifically built to defeat heat ammunition, high explosive anti-tank ammunition. That's the kind of stuff that you see in anti-tank guided weapons like the AT-5. That doesn't apply here, so it's a straight 32. So it's 45 versus 32, 1-to-1. I'm just going to go ahead and pretend that the Iraqis make this roll. Okay, they barely missed it with a 4. A 1, 2, or a 3, they would have pinned down one of those American platoons. Okay? As it is, they rolled a 4. But just for fun, and to show how the game works, we're going to go ahead and pretend that they rolled a 3. That means that these 3 T-55s managed to pin down one unit of Abrams momentarily. Okay, that's going to be a big deal. Because what's going to happen now is everybody else comes screaming over this ridge for a massive overrun attack. They are literally overrunning. They're going to try to overrun those American Abrams. I don't really like their chances. Okay, now this guy up here. 1, 2. Now he's going downhill. 3, 4, 5. Oh man, are you kidding me? 1, 2, 3, 4. Close enough. They're going to try and overrun against this position. So now you see where the Americans are in a bit of a bind. Okay, if I throw all my toes against those T-72s, I'm going to lose these Bradleys. Or I'm going to lose some Abrams down here. So the Iraqi player, because he's the Iraqi player, is being dealt kind of a crappy hand. I.e., I have T-55s and T-72s and I'm playing the Iraqis. But he's making the best that he can out of a crappy situation. He is going for a maximum kind of an attack, and he's attacking all at once. You do not hold back. You do not attack in waves. You hit the enemy. You have to hit the enemy with everything you have, and you have to do it all at once. And what that's going to do is, even an M1 Abram can only kill one T-55 at a time. And if you rush him with 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 tanks, somebody just might get lucky. So the Americans are actually in a little bit of a bind here. The Americans are in trouble. Because again, all these tow missiles have been launched. He doesn't get to use those again. Those Bradleys only carry like a handful of tow missiles, enough for in game terms one phase of fire. Okay, so let's do the opportunity fire. So opportunity fire is what you take while the enemy's moving. You are taking your fire phase early, but I think that I think now is the time. The Americans are being overrun by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times 5. There are 50 tanks coming at the Americans, while 15 others fire at me, while 10 others try to rally. So let me go ahead and try to rally those two T-55s real fast, just to keep the turn sequence straight. One or two, they rally. These Iraqis aren't playing around, man. These Iraqis, for the record, are doing way better than their historical counterparts. Okay, now let's see what happens here. Let's do this one first, because this is the one that kind of scares me a little bit. 15 T-72s are coming straight off this ridge, and they are overrunning M1 Bradleys and exposed American infantry. Fortunately, the M1 Abrams, the M2 Bradleys and the American rifle platoons are not completely helpless. They do have quite a bit of fire that they can do. Okay, so it's 6 for the Bushmaster, 25 millimeter automatic cannon Bushmaster. I am within 2 hexes, which means that I get the double bonus. So it's going to be 12 plus 12. That is 6 and 6 doubled. Becomes 24. The American infantry platoons in there could get 8 American I-class weapons. I know we totally contradicted ourselves from the Poland game last week. I-class weapons after 1967 are allowed to shoot at tanks within 2 hexes. This is Laws, RPGs, Javelins, Dragons, light infantry anti-tank weapons that are baked into that platoon. But if I do that, I can't use them to counter cat attack. But counter cat attack is 8 versus 54. That's less than 1 to 2 odds anyway. Alright, I'm going for it. Oh my god, I can't believe this. So 12 plus. So the choice here is, does this infantry platoon wait till a T-72s are overrunning them to start attacking with sticky bombs and the like, or does he shoot his javelins, his Laws, his grenade launchers now while they're still 150 meters away? And the answer is the latter. And because reasons, don't worry about it. I mean, I can take another 10 minutes in the stream to explain why, but cat attacks are not allowed against, no attack is ever allowed at odds worse than 1 to 4. And if I wait until 3 T-72s enter my hex, then that is going to be 8 against 54. That is greater than 1 to 4 odds. My cat attack now becomes illegal. I might as well attack now, is the short version of that. 12 for Bushmaster 1, 12 for Bushmaster 2, 8 for Infantry Platoon 1, 8 for Infantry Platoon number 2, which is within 2 hexes and can help. That's a total of 40 points. I'm going to engage 1 T-72 platoon at 2 to 1 odds. I'm trying to pin him down. If I can break up the attack while he's still 150 meters out, that's fine. I'll take it. 2 to 1 odds. Oh, a 1. That's a kill. Oh. Boom. He's destroyed. the other two are coming in. Do I let the overrun happen, or do I have some Apaches provide fire support? Now, if the fire support is spent over here to help these Americans down here, that means they are not helping my Abrams. So I'm going to pause and let some people talk about what's going on here. Okay? So first of all, welcome male figure Kovo. Am I saying that right? I know who you are, Piotr. Yes, I know. Yeah, the Apaches are going to shoot at somebody. That's a given. But what we have here is one massive battalion of Iraqi tanks overrunning our Abrams here, all alone. Or we have two more platoons of T-72s overrunning American infantry and Bradleys dismounted here. What do we do with our Apaches? Our Apaches have a chance to shoot. Which target needs support more, do you guys think? I almost speak Polish. I doubt that. I haven't spent a lifetime learning. Doesn't it take a lifetime to learn Polish? It's only been a week. All right, so I'm just going to pause the stream for 2 minutes and let you guys weigh in. It's you are now the squadron commander of those six AH-64 Apaches. You see two groups of Americans in potentially very serious trouble. Which one needs help more? Note, not all Apaches have to shoot at the same target. Two of them can fire one way, one of them can fire the other way. We have these guys who are going to be overrun. They're only in Bradleys and they've already taken their shot. These two units are about to overrun. These two platoons of T-72s. Okay. Down here, we have... Now, these American tanks have yet to fire. Also, that's it. Because he can't fire. Also, I'm sorry, this Bushmaster can fire, but he's more than 2 hexes away. He's only going to get 6. So it's going to be 6 plus 54 plus 54 versus, whatever we have here. So whatever you guys think. Okay, we have our brigade commander, Colonel Lomax, is telling us to divide them. All right, which way? 2 one way and 1 the other way? Okay, yeah, 2 to support the Abrams. I'm sorry, 2 to support the 2. So 2 flights, or should I say 2 pair of Apaches against these 2 to support the Bradleys, and the last one to support the Abrams. Is that what we're talking about, guys? Do we concur? Last going. I'll wait. I'll wait 30 more seconds. Right now, the orders are 2 flights of Apaches to support the Bradleys here, and 1 flight of Apaches to support the Abrams down here to the south. Got it. All right, cool. We have a confirmation order from Liberty 6, otherwise known as Colonel Lomax, Brigade Commander of 137, 1st Armored Division. Here we go. That's 50 and 50. This is their... I did not fire their... I did... I can't remember. I did. This is their last... this is their last Hellfires. They fired their Hellfires earlier and only managed to pin down these 2 T-55s with a crappy die roll. Cool. So, this is their last Hellfire. He's going to have 1 Hellfire left. These 2, this is their last set of Hellfires. Off they go. 50 plus 50 versus 18. 100 divided by 18. All right, I'm going to try and kill one of them at 4 to 1. And then that last one is on his own. We're going to have to see how the overrun goes. Or we can try to pin down both of them. 100 divided by 2 18s is 36, right? 2 to 1. I'm going to try and cut down my casualties. I'm going to be not aggressive and play it safe. I'm going to go for both of the T-72 platoons as a pin rather than one of them as a kill, and then that third one gets to execute his overrun attack. Because that overrun attack is not pretty. I could very easily lose two platoons of Bradleys and a whole platoon of infantry. That's a lot of letters home. I'm going to go ahead and not do that. I'm going to spread that Hellfire attack out on both of those T-72 platoons. Both of them. And in the hopes of saving some lives. So I'm going to play conservatively here and go for a 2-1. 2-1, but this applies against both of the... get recentered here. 2-1, but this applies against both of the T-72 platoons. 2. That is 2 T-72 platoons pinned down. That overrun attack now never happens. And all these guys say, man, we owe you a beer. We're going to go back to base tonight, and then we're going to go to wherever those helicopters are based at. We're going to buy a whole keg of beer, a whole case, a whole keg, a whole case of kegs. How about that? Meanwhile, last one, AH-64 Apache is going to go ahead and fire at these T-72s and T-55s that are trying to overrun these Abrams. These Abrams are also in trouble, but they get to fire now as well. So, first, the Apaches to the north fire. They're firing, they're second to last. This is the one guy who didn't get to fire last turn because he keeps getting pinned down. H-64 to the north gets to fire his Hellfires. He has one Hellfire strike left after this. He fires. This guy down here gets to fire his 12. He's going to fire right down here at these guys that are 2 hexes away. Okay, that's his 25 millimeter Bushmasters. This infantry platoon. Oh, I take that back. He can't do that. Can't do that. He's blocked by this hex spine. He can fire at these guys, but he doesn't get the double bonus. That means this unit does not get to shoot at all, and this unit does not get doubled. That's somewhat bad news. 50 plus 6, and that's it. Okay, now the Abrams get to fire to defend themselves. They are within 2 hexes. Okay, so check it out, Piotr. You remember those Mark 1s that you were fighting last week? How do you like those tanks? Compared to the tanks that you were fighting earlier. Yes, this is totally the same system. Yes, those numbers do match. If you were to I have a time warp game, M1 Abrams go back to Poland, 1939, you would put that counter on that table exactly as is. That's why the numbers are so high. It's all one intercompatible game. That's what happens in tank combat between 1939 and 1991. Alright, let's see how good these guys really are. 108 plus 108. That's the 2 surviving platoons of M1 Abrams in there. Or I should say the 2 that aren't dispersed. Plus 50 from the TOW, plus 6 from the Bushmaster, and the infantry can't help. 272. Remember that number. Divided by 54? No, 272 divided by 54. That's a hell of a kill, but I can't go for the kill. I don't have that luxury. I have to pin down more people than that. 272 divided by, let's see, that's 54 worth of T-72s plus 24 versus 2 platoons of T-55, 678. 272 divided by 78. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. The M1 Abrams are going to be very careful with their gunnery. Again, this guy doesn't get to shoot because he's pinned. He was pinned down by the fire coming from these 3 platoons of T-55s up here. These 2 get to shoot. They get 54. They're within half range, obviously, so they get to doubles. Those 54s are read as 108s. I added it all up, I come up with 272 points, because that also includes Hellfire missile, that includes some 25mm Bushmaster fire, and so on. I'm going to engage all 3 of these platoons. I'm going to engage 2 platoons of T-55s, not all 3. Actually, can I get all three? No, I'm just going to engage those two. The reason being is because that's 54, 18 plus 18 plus 18 plus 24, two 12s, plus 24 equals 78. I have 272 divided by 78. That's a solid 3 to 1. Okay, I probably won't kill them, but I will definitely disperse them. Okay, I will definitely disperse them. That saves me, because now the only ones that are left are going to be this one platoon, the one platoon I didn't shoot at, plus this one platoon. Notice their attack strength combined now equals 30. 15 plus 15, right? This is me getting cagey with the rules. Why is that important? Because it's going to be 50, I'm sorry, 15 plus 15 makes 30, attacking into three platoons of 32. That is just enough to be 1 to 4 odds. In fact, you know what? I am going to go ahead and engage all three. Because you're allowed to attack at 1 to 4. You're not allowed to attack at worse than 1 to 4. Okay. Is that still 3 to 1? Becomes the crushing point. 54 for T-72s plus 36 in T-55s, 90. 272 divided by 90. That's still barely 3 to 1. Oh, 272 divided by 90, 3.022222. That was close. Anyway, 3 to 1. I'm trying to break up this attack before it even gets to me. So I'm going to go ahead and roll for my 3 T-72s. This is technically 6 attacks going on right now. That's a kill, that's a kill. Oop, that was a 2. That's a kill, that's a kill, that's a disperse. And then down here as well, these three. Oh, webcam. A 1 or a 2 kills. That is 3 dispersals. That's pretty much expected. So I pinned down a bunch of guys and killed a few of them. Now there's 15 going into 66. That is more than 1 to 4 odds. I should say that is worse than 1 to 4 odds. An overrun attack now becomes illegal. We broke up that counterattack before it had a chance to hit us. But as you can see, these American Abrams are still in a lot of trouble. They've got 20 T-55s right next to them, more T-55s on the flank. Basically, we have 10 operational M1s versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 versus 35 T-55s plus these two, make that 45. And we got more T-72s over here. And these Apaches are pretty much out of missiles at this point. So if we were going to continue this game, it is by no means over. The Americans could be in a peck of trouble here. But again, on the American turn, for their fire phase, one of the first things they're going to do is they're going to try and rally that Abrams. So if we were going to continue into turn 4, that's a 3, he rallies. That's very good news for the Americans. And it's 5 more 120 millimeter guns that are now killing people. It's going to get nasty from there. But again, this was just a quick play test, everybody. And again, I know it's the 40K weekend and everyone's got other stuff to do, so I didn't want to take up too much time on here. But that is a very, very quick demo game on how Panzer Leader could work for a brand new set of 19. Give me 1 second here. 1991 counters. So yeah, this is where I literally made up these counters earlier today. So and again, it was just a test. See what's going on. Hope you guys liked it a little. It's fun to uh, once in a while get to really throw around some very big firepower. and see how tank guns work in the in the 1990s. Again, compared to this to the tanks that we were using last week. Change picture, please. Again, the rules are designed to be compatible, so these numbers do line up. Where are my Germans? Where are my mighty Panzers that everyone was so afraid of in early World War II? Oh, yeah, here we go. So, what do you think of that matchup? The main German battle tank in, the main German battle tank in 1939 versus the main American battle tank in 1991. Of course, this isn't really a fair comparison. The Germans at this same time period have the Leopard 2, which in some ways is even scarier than the Abrams. I think the Leopard 2 was a little faster than the M1A1 Abrams. Has the same gun. Um, I think the Americans have a little bit better electronics than the Germans do. And I think the Americans M1A1 has a little bit better armor. I don't know when they brought C.Q.B into the into the Leopard 2, or if they ever did, or if the Germans came up with their own version. But a lot of that stuff is still classified for obvious reasons. So I honestly can't say that I know to a mortal certainty what kind of values the Leopard 2 would have. But I know for one thing the British Challenger 2 would have pretty much the same attack factor. They have a 120 millimeter rifle instead of a smoothbore. Um, Again, the rifled gun is technically more accurate than the smoothbore, but again, the Americans win everything with electronics. The Americans put just God's own electronics into their tanks. So that would probably balance out. But the Challenger would definitely be slower. The Challenger might have like a rate of 2, but the Challenger's armor is obscene. The Challenger's armor would be at least a 40, maybe a 45, and would probably have two asterisks after it, -2. Anytime you try to fire any kind of a shaped charge projectile, a heat projectile against it, because their Chobham is ridiculous. They literally invented it. Chobham is a British invention. Cool. Yeah. So again, super fast demo. We weren't trying to, run a full game here. Not sure for what the victory conditions would be or anything like that. We're just playing around. Made up these counters literally this morning. Let's throw them on the table. Let's see what happens. That's the big advantage of hex and counter gaming is you can literally build an army in an hour. I built two armies in 2 hours, at least the beginnings of them. Threw them against each other, and let's see what happens. Um, yeah. So again, everyone, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thanks very much for coming out. I wasn't expecting this many viewers, guys. So again, I super appreciate it. I was expecting maybe like one or two viewers. Even people that aren't watching the 40K weekend are tired from watching streams all weekend from the 40K weekend. But again, super appreciate it. Novus Templar, you did a great job on your stream on Tabletop. Um, I don't know if I got a chance to say that publicly yet. But yeah, gee, I don't know if you saw that. Novus Templar was actually on Tabletop briefly. He had his own little studio going there. That was awesome to see. It's good to see him get recognized for his support. He's been tireless in his support, not only of Sitrep but on tabletop and the whole community. So that was huge. I thought. Laughing Boy and his son James have been having a great time. Martin and James have been doing a great job over there with their 40K streams. I'm not even into 40K. I mean, as most people probably know, but it's still a fun stream to hang out in. They're super welcoming. I've even been checking in on some of LSR 2590 streams overnight because again, he's been super supportive. A lot of these games have been against LSR, and he gets up at like 5 in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning his time, to game with us to help facilitate our Sunday streams. He wasn't able to this time because again he was supporting Beasts of War instead with 40K. Um, but yeah, I was trying to be in on some of his streams to reciprocate some of that support He's also got his own YouTube channel. He's trying to get off the ground, so guys, definitely check that out. I think it's Another Gaming Historian or Another Wargamer Historian. He just recently changed his name. It's okay to give him a plug because he doesn't do moderns. He's mostly Napoleonics at the moment. He's got a great five-part series going on La Haye Saint during the Battle of Waterloo. So yeah, give that a check out if you get a chance. And yeah, Op Center episode 10 is almost in the can. I have maybe another day, half a day of work to put into it, and then that'll be ready to go for later on this week. Gianna, our stream should, our podcast should go up probably. Actually, it was supposed to go up Friday, but I think it got preempted by the 40K weekend. It'll go up soon, I hope. Um, Guys, do keep an eye out for it. I'm not sure exactly when. It's been kind of a weird weekend with the whole event over there in Ireland. But the 40K, I'm sorry, the next Sitrep podcast will be going up shortly. I don't want to promise exactly to. Oh, it's already live. Okay, never mind. Yeah, it's live, so yeah, give it a check out. We have some great conversation in that one too. All right, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and stop jammering. Stop jabbering. I literally can't say words now. It's been a long weekend. I'm going to go ahead and stop jabbering, close down the stream. Thanks very much, everyone, for coming out. One more time to Sit Rep Podcast. We've got a podcast going. Op Center episode 10 is coming out soon. So, yeah. And again, we game. We either hobby or game every Thursday and Sunday. So, yeah, keep checking us out. Keep supporting us. And we definitely appreciate it. And I'll be in touch with most of you guys sometime during the week. So, for now, I'm signing off. Take care.